Welcome back, everyone. I'm Carrington-Russell, Australian award-winning author of Kick Butt Heroines and Delicious Men in Dark Romantic Worlds. And I have a very special guest for you today. We are talking to a USA Today best-selling author who is well known and loved for her teen and adult sports romance. And at the moment, as we're recording, is currently sitting at number 27. I don't know if you knew this, but you're currently sitting at number 27 on the Amazon store. And I think I
Oh my
checked
gosh.
2 days ago and you were at number 17. Like, what is happening? How are you
I
feeling?
don't know. I feel good. Oh, this release has been like mind a little bit mind blowing. It's been
Yeah.
amazing though.
I forgot to mention also, this is Rebecca Jenshak, everybody. I don't think I
Oh,
introduced her.
hi.
I was like, all the accolades. Yeah, it's been a really, really fantastic release. This book is well loved. Like, congratulations.
Thank you. I think it worked well too that I didn't even think about this, but it's like, American football is getting ready to like have the Super Bowl. It's a good time probably to release a football romance. I did not consider that, but I'm like, hey, all right. It worked out well.
Sometimes we just hit luck timing and then we're like, oh yeah, it was totally
I
organized.
totally meant to do that. Yeah.
So take me back to the start then of your journey. Obviously, we'll cover the new release, but I would love to know where you started, why you started publishing, and how you found the first year or so doing it, because it's not easy.
Oh, it's such a hard job, I think. Which is like good that you don't know that in the beginning, I think. So I was an avid reader growing up. I lived in small town Midwest America, where we went to the library to get books every couple weeks. Like that's just what my family did. Both my parents were avid readers as well, so that was just sort of the thing. I was involved in a lot of sports and a lot of activities and stuff, but I was very much an introvert, still am, where I would love to like go off into my room and journal or write or listen to music or whatever. I needed that sort of alone creative time, but didn't really think much about it. I loved English class. If there was like, I don't know if you had these, but we would have like who read the most book contests and classes to like encourage kids to read, and it was like you read the book and then you'd like write a small report on it and you'd get like, something and they'd keep track of it on the wall. I always won those. Like I just, that was my claim to fame, right? And so like as I got older, I went to college, I studied English, but I didn't plan to be an author. I just loved English. It was fun for me. I became a technical writer, which is like most software companies and other companies have them as well, but I worked for software companies and I would create those like help manuals for different things. So it was like, you know, go to the start menu and then click file. It was like those kind of like whatever things. But I did that, and those jobs always had a little bit of creativity in them in different ways. And I enjoyed them. I did that for many, many years. And then I got laid off. Just for like, a company went under kind of thing. And it was like this awakening to me that like it wasn't in my control. And I didn't like that. And I was like, oh no, like I can do a really good job and not, and most people that work in a corporate America know this, but it was just like, I was just this naive, girl who didn't really think about it like that. It was like, I'm going to do the best I can and it's going to work out. And that really changed me in a lot of ways. But the thing that it did the most for me was like, I had time and the like revenge need to like finally like I'm going to do something for myself. So I wrote my first book, and then I just loved the process. And I think you can tell me if I'm right, but I think like after you write one, it's like, "Oh, I can do that again." Like I don't know, there's something about writing that first book that you're like, "Okay, I can do this again." And then it just kind of becomes a thing that you love to do. So that's sort of how mine came about.
What year was that as well that you published that first book?
The first one came out in is either 2017 or 2018.
So I find that there's this a common thing that I find amongst authors is for the first 2 years, you're writing like crazy. Something possesses you. You're just like, oh my God, this is so much fun, it's so much fun. And then when you get to about that 2 year mark is when you actually start realizing some clue onto it sooner rather than later, but oh, this is a business. I need to slow down a little bit. There's other gears that I need to be like controlling right now when it comes to like social
Yeah.
media or how I'm getting this out. So I'm kind of curious as to when the snowball effect happened for you in your career. When was that moment, and what book was it that you were like, holy shit, I'm a real author. Like there's readers, there's demand, like this is a business. When was that moment for you?
It was a little ways for me. So I did end up getting another job to, to support my family and all that. So I went back to work. And so I was writing on the side. So I was very much obsessed with it, but I wasn't necessarily outputting more than I am now just because of the time constraints. So it took 5 books for me before I was like, oh, there are readers out there, like if I write the first kind of book. And for me, it took, I mean, I still make so many mistakes, but the biggest thing for me was like that, figuring out who I am as an author. It took me 5 books to kind of figure out what my place was in the market. So
And
yeah, it
it
was that 5th book.
it can take a while to do that as well. So was that more so genre specific, or just the types of characters that you enjoy writing, or how you market yourself, or all?
Yeah. It was a little bit of all of those things. I mean, the marketing stuff, I feel like I didn't even do a great job of that then, but I wrote a book enough people wanted to read more so than my pushing it. But it was figuring out like I love sports. I'm a sporty girl. I played sports growing up, not well, but like I played them, I know them, I love them. And I never considered writing sports romance. Like I was writing these other things. I wrote small town, I write billionaire, I wrote like a cowboy book. Like I was writing whatever story idea came to me and not, and which is perfectly fine. Like there are some authors that can do that, but it's harder, right? Because some people who read billionaire don't want to read cowboy or don't want to read sports. So for me, it was finding that mixture of like what the market wanted, which like there's this huge rabid audience for sports romance. And guess what? I love sports and I love romance. So like combining those and there also being a place in the market, I think was what it was for me. And then also some of it is just like also figuring out like your actual writing voice. Like I think that came along with it too. Some of my earlier stuff is well, like I played around with different tenses. I wrote in third person POV and then like first past and then for first present. Like I played around with that. And then also like some of my books are a little angstier, some are a little more fun. Like I was like figuring out what felt good.
I love it because I can see how much you actually enjoy writing, like how it's very, and I know that sounds kind of counterintuitive, but sometimes there are authors on here and there's nothing gets like the highs and lows of it. But when it really becomes a job, and it can get really exhausting sometimes. And it re-inspires me again as to why we're here when I see somebody such as yourself come on and be like, and I played around with it and I had so much fun. And I'm like, this is what we're here for as well. Like we really need
Yeah.
to enjoy and play with the process a little bit. Thank you for that. It is.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your writing process? Are you a plotter or a pantser? Are you lighting candles every time you write and singing compose? The process.
Oh my gosh. I think for me, it's like every book has a slightly different process. And then once I find that process for a book, then that's the process for that book, but it's not necessarily the same every time. But there are like themes. Like I am a plotter for sure. But like the degree of plotting kind of varies by book or how I plot. Like sometimes I might do it on Post-it, sometimes I might do it in a Word document or on a pad of paper. Like I think that I'm constantly still trying new things in that regard. Um, but yes, I'm definitely a plotter. I don't have any specific, I mean, I have like I'm more creative in the morning. So I do my writing mostly in the morning, which is funny because I wrote at night for the first like how many ever years because that was the only time that was available to me. But I definitely am better in the morning. And then like I meditate for a few minutes before it, but that's just more to like okay, shut off all the other noise, like it's time to focus type thing. I listen to focus music as well, which um maybe helps. It's more about like I write in sprints where you like set the timer for how many ever minutes. I'll do like 45 minutes with the focus music and then I'll get up and walk around for a little bit and then sit down again. So that's really I mean, those are the things that always stay the same, I would say. And then everything else is like, let's try something different for this book and see how it works. I've never tried lighting a candle or singing Kumbaya before, but those could be
Next book, next
next
book.
book.
When you hit number
Yes.
one, I want a small dedication. Be like, wow, the candle,
Yes.
oh yeah, really works.
It, that was really what did it. Do you have specific processes you do like
Um,
that?
I think I do now, actually, to be honest. I never used to, but it's interesting. It's a question I want to ask you afterwards about transitioning into full-time authorhood because it changes things. But yeah, I always have a candle. I always light a candle. I have what do you call it? But not incense, your oils going, and then I have a big bat cave neon sign because I always call it my writing bat cave because I look like a little raccoon writing. Like I'll always have a coffee on hand, and then I'm like, right now we're ready to set up. I'll have my crystals. It's a very I believe that we always need a space, unless of course you're somebody who needs to bounce in different spaces. But I really think there's a lot of, you know, if this is your space, if this is your workspace and work environment, you should really try and romanticize it to a bit so then you don't become begrudging of that space. You want to be welcome in that space. You want it to be clean. You want it to be, I'm just so wholesome. I'm just so wholesome that way. But
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's great. Yeah.
I am curious how you went with becoming a full-time author because it's very different when you're working, when you've got multiple jobs going, and then you're like, this is the only time I can squeeze in to write this book, and you get it done. And then you become full-time author, and then all of this time, and you're not using much of it at all to write, and somehow you become carried away with everything else that's happening. And you go, man, why is this harder for me to write now than when I was working
Yeah.
full time or multiple jobs? So, how did you go creating some kind of routine for yourself?
So I went full time amidst the pandemic. So for the first part of it, it really wasn't because I have kids and they were home doing, school through Zoom and stuff. And so it didn't look that much different. It was like still chaotic and whatever during the day. And then so for a while, I think that maybe helped because I was still being efficient with the time that I had because, I didn't have a lot of it. But yes, it is like is it just the worst feeling when you sit down? Like for me, I sit down at like 8 o'clock to 8:30 in the morning. And if at 10 o'clock I've not written any words, I'm like, oh my gosh, what have you done with your life? Like, stop it. It is so easy to just do one more thing. And I'm also the type of person who likes to like clicking something off my to-do list feels good. And if I can do this other thing that's not as important, but that I'll get done in 5 or 10 minutes, that feels better than writing 2,000 words. It's like I click that off real fast, get that little dopamine hit. Um, so yeah, it's part of it's just been
I'm the
creating those, yes, creating those like time structures where I'm like, okay, between 8 and 11, this is writing time. This is, after that you have these other things to do. So doing like the most important thing first, which seems obvious but is really hard to do.
It really is. I think the best thing for anyone is to figure out when the right writing time is for them. Like I have author friends who work best at night. Like they'll be writing from, 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., which sounds horrible to me. But
Right, me too.
sounds different. I'm a morning writer as well. And so I find that if I then get bogged down in the morning, I'm like, oh, I'll just quickly reply to a few of these emails, or I'll quickly do that. And as you said, 2 hours has gone by, and then you realize you're posting on social media doing this, and then you feel not as inspired to just dive straight into the words. So definitely understanding like when your peak time is and prioritizing that because all the other stuff will always fill
Yeah,
up time easily. How
always. Yeah.
how long does it usually take you to like how word count wise, what are your books roughly and how long does it usually take you to write?
They've gotten longer. I'm getting wordier. So my books are about 90,000 words now, generally. This last one was, I think, 95. So they just keep inching up, but I'm reaching a point where I'm like, no more. But it takes me about 3 months. And that usually includes going through most of the edits. So I write a pretty rough first draft that's shorter than that, usually like maybe 75 or 80K. And then as I go back through, I'm adding, not taking away. I know some people do it the opposite way, but Yeah, it takes me a couple of months and I try to write around 2 to 3,000 words a day, Monday through Friday. But, sometimes it gets to where like I'm getting to a point where I have a deadline and that I really need to finish this book by early March. And I'm like, oh, well, we might have to have a couple big days here. Um, the beginnings are really hard for me to get going. That's where I struggle.
Interesting. Then I'm kind of curious about your editing process because you said that you write really rough drafts, which I feel that. Mine's just like word vomit. I'm always interested to see how different people have their process and their editing process for end product because obviously you want to make it as clean as possible to throw it out into the market. So often I'll do like a copy line editor, which does like all the grammar and stuff for those who are watching like grammar. And then you have, I do use a dev editor as well, which is one thing that I never invested at the start of my career because I didn't have the money. Now I'm actually like, this actually makes me feel a lot more secure in pushing that book out and then seeing perhaps plot holes that I might not have, and then another editor. And then obviously you have your betas and such. So I'm kind of curious what your process is and what the things that you've installed that have made you feel more, I mean, as secure as we possibly can before we release a book and hope
Ah,
loves it.
yeah, there's nothing worse than putting a book out and somebody making a point and you're like, "Oh, that's a good point. I didn't think of that." Like that's the worst feeling. So after I finish a rough draft, I go back through and clean it up and I'm adding or like generally speaking because the beginning's so hard for me, it's usually that first 15 to 20K that changes quite significantly. So I'm going back through now that I know kind of the characters and where the story's going and all of that. I am fixing that and adding words. And then it goes to my first like content type editor and they go through and they pick out sections that are rough or like, hey, you really like didn't close the loop on this. Kind of like a developmental editor. I mean, that's basically what they are. Um, and then I go through it again, ideally. This does not always happen because sometimes time just gets in the way. So sometimes I will send it to that person and the line editor at the same time, but that makes my job so much harder because then I'm trying to go through and fix, and then I've got to send back to the line editor a second time. So it gets tricky. But so ideally, I send it to that dev content person first. It comes back to me and then it goes to line, and then I have a proofer as well. And then my betas see it not at the beginning. They see it when it goes to line. Because then I'm like, because my content person doesn't generally go through twice. So it's like, okay, did I address those content things or did I somehow manage to make this work? That's kind of how I use my betas to like check that I have made the things. I don't
Yeah.
know. So that's what I'm doing currently. But again, like with every book, I feel like it changes slightly as I'm like, oh, that worked better if we did it this way. Or yeah, but I'm the kind of person that wants all the feedback. I want all the feedback now so that I'm not surprised later. If you hated the heroine, I want to know now so that before I put it out and somebody's like, or not somebody, 20 people are like, this was great, but the heroine was awful. I want to know now so that, I can decide to change it or not or whatever.
100%. And amongst this, while you're doing all the editing, I'm assuming that you're already working on the next project as well. So you're balancing all these different eggs at once.
I usually am, I've tried writing and editing books at the same time, like writing one, editing another. And my brain doesn't like that very well. I can do it if I have to, and I've had to the last couple of years because I'm doing some traditional stuff as well, and that just falls where it falls. But typically, I'm not starting writing a new book, but when it's in edits is when I am plotting and doing all of the marketing stuff to make sure we're ready to go for release. So I am doing other stuff, but it's usually mostly around the same book that I'm working in.
Amazing. I love how compartmentalized that is. That sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
What was writing the comeback like? So this is obviously the third book in, is it the Holland Brothers series? I think it is.
Uh-huh.
What was there something special or unique about this book that you weren't really expecting while writing it?
I mean, I think this one has like sort of a soft love, like a quiet love that I was not prepared for necessarily, or like I don't know, like the feeling of the couple is just different than maybe some of the others. Like sometimes it's loud and big grovels and big whatever. And this one I would say is maybe a little quieter. The hero was interesting to write because he lost his hearing when he's younger and he's a professional football player. So him managing that hearing loss in everyday life and in sports world was really fun. I've been writing him. He's been like a secondary character in many books. So I'd had like kind of time to get to know him and research and do all of these things. But it was a different sort of being in his point of view was different from any other character I've written just because I had to consider more things and make sure like, oh, wait, he's not picking up the phone and calling somebody, or if he's signing, like making sure that that was clear in the book. So yeah, it was interesting in that regard.
I love that. Oh, I'm so excited to read it. I'm so excited. What would be the advice that you have for authors who are wanting to delve into sports romance? Because my understand, I will not touch sports romance. Although I love it because I feel like there's either two paths that you can take with this. One, you are a very physically sport type of person. I'm not. I go to the gym. That's it. I don't do sports, but then you have all the jargon, you know the language, you know the sport itself. Or you have authors who focus predominantly on the romance, and then there will be a highlight of one to two of the games. Neither are right, neither are wrong. But that's my understanding of the beast that be sports romance. So I stay in my lane. But I would love to know what advice you have for fellow authors who are wanting to delve into this world.
Yeah, I think there are people. I don't think it's even authors. I think it's readers who are louder about this than authors. I don't think we care as much. um, but there are definitely are readers who prefer it one way or the other. They don't care about the sport and they don't want to read a bunch about it. Or there's the people who love sports and they're like, I want to know that you know about this sport. So I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. I think if you want to write sports, come on over. The water's nice. Like I don't think there's a wrong way to do it. I have read plenty of sports romances that aren't heavily sporty, but still like I think the real thing that people want out of a sports romance is to feel that there's something about an athlete's perspective that is different than a billionaire perspective or a cowboy. And what is that? And how do you show that in the book? And that does not have to be the jargon. It can be their lifestyle. They're getting up every morning. They're rigorous in their training. They have teammates and they have, or, whatever it is. Like, I think it's just hitting those things. It's not necessarily like being the expert on a sport. But I would, if you aren't like super knowledgeable on that specific sport, I would make sure like to have a reader that is just to make sure you don't, because like I even still like I write a bunch of different sports and I catch myself where I'll be like, it was halftime. And then I'm like, oh, this is a sport that does not have a halftime. Like, so it's like it's just easy to screw up little things and readers that are passionate about that sport can be very upset about that. But again, it's not just like you can find your place in sports romance without being that.
It fascinates me. Honestly, I have not yet actually read a sports romance, but I see them all the time on TikTok. So I might actually start with yours. So for better or for worse, it might ruin me. Maybe I'll start writing sports romance. I would love to know about the time that you made it onto the USA Today bestseller list, and
Oh,
most importantly, how you celebrated, because that's a huge accomplishment.
how did I celebrate? Okay, let's see. How did I celebrate? I know that I had a little bottle of champagne that was like a little teeny tiny, like cheap champagne, even at that, that I had. I think it was like in a cute bottle, though. I think that's why I bought it. I'm not a big, I mean, I love to pop some champagne, but I don't know like brands or, whatever. So I had had this little bottle. I think it was really important to me at the time. I was wide, which, it just means my books were available on retailers everywhere. And it was a bigger deal than to me. I mean, I, I don't know what the landscape is like now for people who are like trying to hit it. But at that point it was very important to me and I mean, I'm still really proud of it, but it was like a weird thing whereas like I like I don't even really remember it that much now. Isn't that funny how it's like can be something that's so important to you and so big and I'm so proud of it, but then like you asked me that and I'm like, "Oh, like how did I celebrate?" Like I think this is one of those careers where it's really easy to get caught up in the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It moves so fast and there's always something that feels like a big deal. It's really like I have found myself this year in particular being like, okay, what do I really want? Like, where are we really going here? Because I think we just see through social media all the things that are possible. It's possible to get a Netflix deal or like be on like what was it? Entertainment TV that Colleen Hoover was on. Like it's like the limit is just endless. And so it's important. It's been important to me this year to like figure out like what are those things? Like, back then it was USA Today, but did I want to hit that for me or did I want to hit it because that's what felt, anyway, that was not what you asked, but that's my tirade on this career just gets crazy on like, what's the next thing?
It's so true as well, and I am a massive advocate on us like having those small celebrations because you're so right. Like you're like, cool, I signed a contract for like translations over here. That's awesome, and then you're already on to the next single. And all those small little things are massive accomplishments, especially when you think back to the start of your career when you didn't have those things, you didn't know those things were
Yeah.
possible. And as you said, more than ever, we're seeing how possible it is. Like the world is literally our oyster. It's just how we're gonna figure out our path to get to that thing or those things that we want. And I love that you're actually assessing this year what are the things that I want, because what might feel right and good for one author isn't necessarily what's for us. And so I think once we really do have a goal set in place, we think, okay, let's backtrack a bit. How do I actually accomplish that? But
Yeah.
how do you manage not burning out? Because working at this rapid pace constantly, it's not a 9 to 5 job. I mean, if you tell me that you have balance and 9 to 5, I want to be you when I grow up. So how do you
No,
avoid burnout and becoming
no.
overwhelmed?
I think I have kids. That helps. I think they help in the fact that like they have needs and things that they're younger still. So it's like, I mean, they're not super young. They're like 10 and 15. They're young enough. They still want and need me to do things for them. Right. So sometimes that just pulls me away enough that I can be like, okay, it is really not important that I answer this email right this second. But also I love this job. This is my dream job. And so I want to be working on it. And it's a job where you can see sometimes the fruits of your labor, so to speak. Like you work harder and then you see that and you're like, oh, well, if I just work harder, I'll see even more. So I think having kids has helped, like, which is, not an answer for everybody, but that part has helped me. And then I think just as I'm getting a little farther and I am reaching goals, I'm like, okay, well, wait, I don't feel any. I think I thought I would feel this like sense of content and like, oh, I made it. We're here. We're done. I can just sit back and, go for long walks every day or whatever. And so I'm getting to that point. I don't know if it's age or just like the career where I'm like, what do I actually want? What do I want my day to look like? What do I want my life to look like? Like, I mean, there's some great things about this career. I went for a walk earlier today just because like I could get out and do that in the middle of the day. But yeah, it is really hard. I definitely do not have balance, but it is better than it was earlier in my career, I will say.
I'm kind of curious then about your delegation process, because there definitely comes to a point where you do need to start delegating because it just turns into a wild rapid thing, especially when we are so inundated with social media and we're so accessible. So I'm kind of curious, do you control much of your social media, or is that something that you've delegated as well? And what are other parts that you've gone, you know what, this isn't my strength, this isn't my joy, please somebody else take over?
A lot of it is not my joy. Um, I mean, but I say that, but then I have delegated a lot of things and then taken some back because I was like, oh wait, I actually did want that. I just didn't think I did. So the things that I delegate out are ads. 100%. Like I don't do any of my ads, but what I do is provide graphics and content
Yeah.
for them. So it still requires a little bit of my effort and time on it. So like for the release last week, we pulled like some excerpts and we pulled some like reviews and we gave images and things like that. But I'm not doing the actual ads. The same thing with my social media. I largely am not the one actually posting, but I help come up with the content and approve it and all of that. And then I am also the one that goes in and like looks at my messages and things like that. And that part does bring me joy, like, connecting with other people. What else have I have an assistant who does a lot of like the first step of things. Like she'll put together the draft of the newsletter with all of like everything we need in there. And then I can go in and just like make it mine, like personalize it with my voice and, give it a read through and things like that. So, also my husband works with me he's just started working with me last year and he does a lot of the managing of people. So like making sure that the ads people have whatever they need or, so I do actually have a lot of help, but it's still like I think this is what I have found. You can tell me if you found this too. I'm still the creativity behind it. And that's hard. That is hard to delegate because like we see our books a certain way. We have a vision for it and other people can read it and pull content or do whatever, but it's still not always, but generally speaking, I usually know what the vision that's going to help push it is best.
I agree with that. I so this year I have actually made my year of delegation. So as to a same thing, what doesn't bring me joy because it does come to a point in your career where it's just too much and it's too overwhelming. And I've had in the last year like exponential growth as well. So with that, I really need to address my foundations to keep up with that, or I will burn out doing it all. And so it's a really interesting process because as you said we are still the creativity and I've like really tried to take a step back very similar to yourself, which is why I was resonating. What am I looking for? What am I actually wanting to achieve out of this at this point? What does my healthiest day to day look like where I'm really enjoying this, but I'm really enjoying the lifestyle that it's creating for me as well? Those I
Yeah.
think are important questions because we do really need to reap the rewards of our labor, and I feel like we just sometimes get too stuck in that hustle. um, and so what I realized was I am the writer. Yes, you can CEO, director, boss, whatever best word like makes you feel like the most confident version of yourself, but you don't need to be the workhorse on every single gear that's happening behind the scenes. And so it's difficult. It's a lot of effort when you're first initially delegating because you want to let them have the most of your voice as possible, but then that's why you still have to go in and do the tweaks afterwards, as you said, like with the emails
Yeah.
and things like that, because we are the creative voice, but also we're the face of is the way that I see it. I mean, people can see it differently, but I've come to a point where I'm like, this is really is a business. I am the face of, and then I create the product as well. The rest, there are parts that I could just give away freely. Please just take it.
Yeah, I think the thing is like you either have to decide if you want to delegate some of those things and it not necessarily be exactly how you would do it, or do you not want to do them at all? And some people just choose like I'm not going to do TikTok or I'm not going to do Instagram or I'm just going to rely on my newsletter or whatever. And I think that's perfectly fine. But like know that you're giving up one thing for another. So yeah, it's
100%.
hard.
And good luck to anyone who's going through the process.
Yeah.
What actually, speaking of then delegation, where are the places that you found the right people for you? Because it can be very tricky. So were there any particular groups or did you mostly go off referrals from friends? Where did you find the right people?
I think all of mine have come from referrals. So I have a Facebook company that I use that was from referrals. My Amazon ads person came from, I have like an Amazon ads rep, and that rep connected me with this, like that was random. And then my assistant was a referral, like somebody in the community as well. And I have been really blessed, I think, that I like it's worked out well because it is always a little tricky where you're like, I really hope this works out. And like, I'm not necessarily a good manager. It's something that I have like tried to get better at, but my husband is really good at it. And I'm so thankful because I'm not good at like it's a special skill to get people on the same page as you and like keep them inspired. Like, I, they want to be happy in their job too. This is like not just about you and your. So anyway, side note, but I am not great at managing people. My husband refers to me as the talent. I'm the talent. That's what he says. I'm not the CEO or the boss. I'm the talent, which makes me happy. It makes me feel like I'm the star. Um, but I've been lucky, but absolutely most of it has come from referrals from other authors or other people somehow in the business.
And I always agree with referrals because you already trust the person that's obviously referring. So you're like, okay, if they're saying they're okay, then they should be okay. And it doesn't always happen that way. And that's okay as well. It's a screening process like any job. What is your three must-dos every time you have a release that you're like, these three things must be in place?
Oh, good question. Well, one time I released a book without ads, so it's making sure we've sent all the like we thought we had and we just had not like sent that information to the right people, which is something that can happen in delegating. So one of the most important things we do is making sure we've sent all that ad content that I talked about, all the excerpts, the reviews, graphics, the budget, like everything. We've got all of that ready to go. Same thing with social media content. Usually that is like happening maybe 2 months out, 6 weeks, whatever, but like kind of a plan for that, which includes my newsletter and any like cross promotion I'm going to do with other authors to get in their newsletters or do giveaways or whatever, which that in itself is just like the marketing piece is just one big beast. So that's two. And then let's see, what would three be? I guess just making sure I have like, I do like, release boxes, generally speaking. I mean, sometimes it's just a paperback, sometimes it's an actual box. And that is kind of a lot to manage too. So it's usually around that release time, we're trying to get all of that together and sent out, which I guess maybe could fall under the marketing too. Marketing is like big enough to cover all three of those.
It's such a tricky beast. And I, pardon me, I was only actually having this discussion with a author friend yesterday, and I often reflect to the good old days of I mean I published in 2014, so been doing it for about a decade now, and it's changed so much. And you would have the same even from 2017, how much it's changed. And it has
Yes.
never been more apparent to me than now that you have to pay to play. And back 2014, everything was very organic, like Kindles, all of that. It was all very new, so people were word of mouth. Now we're heavily inundated with a time where everything is social media, but there are a lot of authors out there, and I feel like we can genuinely, like, there's just so many readers and there's so much space for it. But there are also authors who have been for a very long time doing this, and so now to be seen, you really do have to invest that money, and it can be very difficult when you are not necessarily financially there yet. So I'm kind of curious what advice you might have for those authors who aren't yet in that position where they can throw a couple of $1,000s on ads. What advice would you offer them to still try and be seen?
I think if I didn't have an ad budget, I would spend more time. It would be time instead of money. And I know that's not an answer that everyone would be able to do, but I think it would be more of me reaching out to influencers, offering them copies of the book to read, or more posting my own content if that's something that, I'm not very good at like stuff I create myself. So I prefer to like form relationships with other people that will create content for me, but there's a place for both. And I think if you can get enough people talking about your book, it's actually better than any ad budget. I mean, I think I thought early on because I didn't have a big ad budget, but again, it was way different. Like I didn't need a huge one back then, but I always thought my misconception was if I had that money, I could get myself to there. And I can 100% tell you, I have spent thousands of dollars on releases and it not done well. Like it is not just money. It takes several things, but money can help. So, I think, yeah, I think knowing that like maybe relieves some pressure to like, okay, I don't that's not the magic. It's not the silver bullet like it that you think it is, but it will definitely help if you have a good product and an audience. So I would focus my time
Yeah.
on like social media stuff, I think. Um, in whatever capacity that is working for you. For me, it's Instagram works more so than TikTok, but I'm constantly trying.
Yeah. Aren't we all? I'm like, oh, it's so true what you said, and I think it was actually Becca Syme who I originally heard it from, but a lot of authors say it now. But there are many elements to this, and it isn't just having that cash as well, as you said. And it is obviously good product one, product talent, but also timing and luck are such an important component.
So important.
And as you said, like you didn't really gauge that this will be right before like a big season that was coming up in real life. So that's obviously been perfect timing as well. And I think it's it's hard because we can't control that situation, but it is dead set. It is what I believe to be the truth is that luck and timing really do have a massive element in it. And if you don't have a massive budget, then just try and put all your time that you possibly can. And I like to, as you suggested, reach out to TikTokers, reach out to influencers. You might be like, oh, but that's going to take so much time. What if they don't? I remember doing that about a year ago. And I would spend hours going through and being like, you look like somebody who might enjoy my book. Do you want? And not each of them replied. But do you know what? It definitely, when those posts started coming out, it saved me and whatever X amount could have been in ads as well. So you need to put the time in. If you want the crime, you need to put the time in.
Yeah. And those relationships, if you like find people who you actually like, it's a good match and they'll stay with you for many books. It's not ad like whereas ad money is kind of like you spent it, it's gone, it's done. Those relationships can stick with you for a really long time. I mean, I have some people who have been reading my books since I started and still promote me. So it can be really beneficial, but it is hard. I mean, I still do it too. We find new people every release to reach out to, and I still hate it. I'm still like, oh gosh, cringe. It's not limited to like new authors feeling that. We all feel it. Like it's awful.
Oh,
Please pick me is what it feels like.
I really actually love this. You and I sound very similar in the aspect of we're very focused on relationship building. And I do actually want to have a conversation about that because there's not many people I've had that conversation with on here. But I genuinely feel like for me, I know that wherever I get through in life, it's not necessarily what I know, it's who I know situation because it's one of the things that brings me the most joy in this industry is who you meet, what relationships you build. Like you just never know who you're going to meet. You never know what story they're going to have or what information you might learn from them. Or so I think there is merit in putting yourself out there, even if you are an introvert. A lot of us are. And so I think really putting yourself out there and just being comfortable with the fact, like I know when I started this YouTube channel, I was like, who's going to want to talk to me? Nobody's going to talk to me. And then I realized actually if somebody says no, somebody else is going to say yes. And now I have phenomenal authors such as yourself coming on, and it just brings me so much joy. So I think that everyone really should try and put themselves out there and just ask the question. It never hurts to ask.
Yeah, and it's something I did not do at the beginning of my career. I had this idea of being very separate.
Yeah.
Like I don't know if I was afraid, but like I didn't want to be in those reader spaces. I didn't want to be your friend. I wanted there to be a very clear line, like that's the idea I had. And then as I like got farther along, I was like, why? Like this is like an old school thinking. This is not the way that like it has to be anymore. I mean, it's still good to have boundaries and all those things, but yeah, I think it was for me, it was watching other people do it and then thinking, oh, like I really admire and respect this person. They're doing it. Like, why am I so afraid to do this and put myself out there? And so it's not comfortable necessarily for me. Like, I love chatting one on one and things like that, but like reaching out to people I don't know is like, I would rather just write another 1,000 words.
That says a lot as well. What have you found has been the most challenging thing for you in this industry and your greatest accomplishment so far?
Oh, oh man, challenge. I think for me. that I've had a lot of like I've had to learn things the hard way. Like, what's that expression where you have to like touch the hot stove to know it's hot? Like I've had a lot of those. But what all basically comes down to, I am not the kind of author who can write whatever I want and veer off and do fun things, and my readers come along. There are some people who can do this because their writing style is unique enough or, whatever. But for me, I need to provide, you know, the same sort of book, in different ways, different setups, different scenes, different, it's not the same book over and over again, but it gives them that same feel every single time. And that was hard for me to learn because I thought, oh, I can write this story. Like it's interesting. But those readers are just not the same. And it took me a long time to realize that. And even once I like figured out that I wanted to write sports romance, I tried like I still kind of would veer off occasionally and be like, oh, I'm gonna write this random standalone that, isn't part of anything else. And yeah, for me anyway, I know that authors make this work, but that was a hard lesson of like, if I want people to read my books, and I do, then I need to provide, like, I need them to know what they're going to expect from a Rebecca Jenshak book and then give that to them every single time. So that has been a hard challenge for me. I thought, like, I'm a pretty, like, even steady person, but for whatever reason, in my writing, I wanted to, like, yeah. A biggest accomplishment. I mean, I think just being here. I mean, I support my family now. Like my husband works with me. Like we support our family this way is mind-boggling to me. I grew up thinking of authors as mostly like, starving artists. I think we had this like misconceptions that they just really didn't make any money, or the few that did were like the ones you saw getting TV deals and whatever. And so being able to do this job and like it's a dream. It's my dream job. So just being able to do it how many ever years, nearly a decade, 8 years, 7 years, whatever it is, like and seeing that like I think I can do this for the rest of my life. Like I think I can keep doing this till I need to retire. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
I love that. I want to know then, I wonder if you have the answer for it. What
Oh,
is the big dream that you're chasing? What is the goal that you want for your writing career since you've been thinking about it heavily?
I have been. So this is like, I don't know if it's like a quantifiable, but I want my books to be everywhere. Like I want to see them in airports. I want to see them in stores. I want to see that like people reading them. Like I just want, I write these like fun, happy books and I just want them everywhere. I want people to be able to find this happy fun everywhere. The other secondary to that, I would really like to see my books made into a series, like a Netflix series or whatever, because the way that I see my books as I write them is like a movie. Like I see it in my head and I'm typing along kind of thing. So I think that would be really fun to like actually see it
Yeah.
on the screen. Those are two sort of like that I know. It used to always be money related for me, where it was like, oh, I want to hit this certain money thing. I want to hit this certain. And then I was fine, like, do I really care about that? Or do I want, you know, which some people do and good for them. Like, cool. Like you make those 8 figures or those 7 figures, like yeah.
Respect it. I love it. And I'm so I definitely feel like these are going to happen for you. So it's only a matter of time. So I'm super excited.
I'm
Um,
manifesting that.
yeah, literally, I'm such a huge manifestor. I'm like, get it, go, get it. I do have a segment called Speed Dating with an Author. So it's basically five rapid candles. Well, I lit a candle. I've created napkins, but it's five rapid questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, I think so.
Amazing. What is the clumsiest moment you've ever had?
Clumsiest moment. Oh man, I'm not super clumsy, but I'm definitely like a fumbler, like fumbling with my hands. But the thing that comes to mind of maybe like the most embarrassing, most traumatic is one time in grade school, we had like, those like lunch trays, and they were usually like a heavy plastic. And for whatever reason that day we had like styrofoam ones instead. And I stood up and I did the normal like one hand, I'm too cool for school, like carry it to the, whatever, the trash. And it broke and like went everywhere. I was mortified. So I don't know if that's the clumsiest, but it comes to mind because I was so embarrassed.
I do enjoy that story. Sorry to poor young Rebecca, but it's funny. What are the three words that best describe you?
Oh, describe me. Introvert, creative, and chill. I'm very like everyone's always like, "Are you mad? Is something wrong?" No, I'm just like chill. I'm just the chill person sitting in the corner. Yeah.
Love that. I'm not gonna lie, you look like a vibe with your headphones on at the moment. Just chilling. What is the song that best describes you?
Ooh, song. I can't think of a like particular one, but I'm just gonna go with like any Fleetwood Mac song. There's something about Fleetwood Mac that just puts me in my happy place. So any Fleetwood Mac song, I'm is me.
It's really a vibing. You should. What, or should I say, who has been your favorite character to write and why? You can only choose one.
Only one? Um, okay, so the very first sporty guy I ever wrote is probably my favorite. His name is Wes. He's from a book called The Assist, and he's this basketball player who is like super smart, and he is like sleeping through class. He's so smart, and they everybody thinks he's dumb because he's like, but actually he's just sleeping through because he's so smart. Anyway, I think because he was the first jock I wrote, for sporty kind of hero, he has a special place in my heart.
I love that. And I really love characters like that as well because I'm like, damn you.
Yeah.
What is a unique talent or skill set that you have that not a lot of people know about?
Ooh. Well, I played basketball for a lot of years and I was never very good, but I'm really good with like I don't know how many people will know this reference, but there's this like I think he's like a 1950s basketball player. Anyway, his nickname was Pistol Pete and he could do all these like tricks with a basketball and I like studied these tricks forever so I can like I wish I had a basketball in here, but like I can like flip the basketball around on my hands or like do different like weird like totally not needed or required for basketball skills.
I love that though. That's so cool. So you're basically like the show pony, the you're like
Yes.
tricks
Yeah,
I could
I could be like one of the Harlem Globetrotters as long as I didn't need to like score any points or anything. Cause like I'm short and it just.
I actually played basketball for a bit as well, and I'm the same. I was a good shot, like I could do 3 points. I was surprisingly good at it. But do not give me the ball while I'm trying to run at the same time because I'm not cut out
Like,
for
let me get to my spot first.
it. Like, or they used to call me the hound for a while because I would just chase people constantly, and they'll be like, "I'm so exhausted. Please just stop." And I'm like, "This is all I'm good for." So here I am. And then somebody would give me the ball, and I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Let's not get excited here."
Oh my gosh, I love that.
I have had so much fun having you on today. Let us know what do we need to be on the lookout for, and most importantly, where do we find you?
So the next book I'm writing is the final book in the Holland Brothers series. So this book is like four series. This is the fourth one. It's the youngest brother, and it's a baseball book, baseball single mom. So I'm excited about that. I haven't written single parent in a long time. And then I'm going to start a new series, and I haven't exactly completely wrapped my hands around that, but I'm going to start a new series, which is always so fun. I love starting something new. And I am primarily like I hang out the most on Instagram. I also have a Facebook reader group called The Love Shack, and I have a website which is just my name, RebeccaJenshak.com. And then my books are all in Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, and all of them except for this newest one are in Audible, which that one should be coming soon.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Everyone, I'll pop the links down below. Check her out. She's amazing. And honestly, if you want to look at like branding on point, definitely check out her website and Instagram because like Rebecca is doing all the things we want to do when we grow up. So go check it out. And thank you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. It
Thank you. This was so fun.
was. Bye guys.